Sophie Bell, a woman in her late 20s, quietly navigates the bustling interior of an opulent ski lodge tucked into the majestic peaks. The lodge is abuzz with an exclusive winter gala, where wealthy patrons sip champagne and lounge near grandiose fireplaces, their laughter and chatter barely touching Sophie as she moves through the equipment room. Her attire is practical and unassuming, a plain, functional jacket, sturdy boots, and her trusty knit cap pulled snugly over her brunette curls. She meticulously inventories the ski gear, checks the detailed maps displayed on the wall, and ensures every piece of equipment is ready for the adventurers sure to swarm the slopes. Guests flutter in and out, often overlooking her entirely. She's accustomed to this cloak of invisibility. Today, a well-dressed gentleman even went as far as to mock her rustic appearance and shared a knowing smile with his companion, assuming Sophie incapable of comprehending the intricacies of the exclusive world they inhabit. Amidst this glamorous, humming scene, the tension suddenly twists. An alarm blares from the control station. The chairlift, laden with guests, has abruptly halted mid-ascent. Faces freeze in horror as the announcement echoes through the lodge. Out of the windows, as snow flurries dance in the air, the sight of the stalled lift, exposed to the biting cold and gusty winds, turns the cheerful gathering into a thundercloud of anxiety. Panic ripples through the crowd, drinks are abandoned, voices escalate, and chaos edges forward. Everyone is on high alert, the joyous night curdling into an unpredictable ordeal as nature's wrath bears down. Sophie stands at the periphery, eyes narrowing as she assesses the looming crisis. The initial shock cascaded through the crowd like an avalanche. People pressed against the large glass doors that led to the terrace, craning their necks to see the immobile chairlift silhouetted against the wintry twilight, strings of gondolas hanging like stranded pearls. Cold reality tightened its grip as a blizzard began to set in, further intensifying the sense of impending doom. Guests milled around anxiously, some shouting for updates from the visibly overwhelmed staff, while others clutched their coats tighter, trying to stave off the chill that seemed to seep both inside and out. Calls were placed to emergency services, but the mounting storm had rendered a swift response unlikely. The lodge's own staff, unprepared for such events, floundered in confusion. A maintenance worker attempted to restart the lift via remote controls to no avail. Amidst the rising tumult, Sophie Bell acted decisively. She took a deep breath and moved towards the service entrance, fetching her well-worn toolkit and a topographical map she kept handy after hours of private studying. Her movements were purposeful, cutting through the din of frantic voices. Her eyes scanned the gathered crowd, finding the head technician, a nervous man seemingly ready to bolt. "I need your help," Sophie asserted levelly, making eye contact with him. There was an edge of steel to her tone that brooked no dissent. The technician hesitated for a moment, eyes flickering from Sophie to the sea of guests who still saw her as no more than a background character at best. But with mounting chaos and no concrete plan at hand, he nodded, hope ignited by her certainty. A few skeptical murmurs floated through the crowd, dismissed as quickly as they arose. Though some doubted her relevance, the urgency in Sophie's voice and the clarity of her plan were contagious enough to command attention. She gestured to an underutilized snowmobile parked outside. "We need to reach the lift's mechanical station to manually release the block. I could use a couple more hands." Two younger ski instructors, clad in their deep green lodge uniforms, volunteered hesitantly, motivated by a duty to their guests and inspired, perhaps, by Sophie's commanding presence. Sophie sketched a quick plan. "We'll ride up to the tower. I've fixed these systems before, there's a frozen hydraulic valve, I'd bet. We'll get it thawed, override the lock, and get this lift moving." The apologetic snow spun around them as they mounted the snowmobile, the gusts tugging insistently at their clothes. The chill was biting, and their breaths clouded in front of them, but Sophie's mind was sharp and focused, the components of the challenge clear as if they were laid out before her in the equipment room. As they powered up the icy route, the task ahead became physically daunting. The storm was intensifying, and visibility was a dynamic, mercurial play that revealed and hid obstacles within moments. Sophie's heart thrummed not just with urgency but with a deep, reaffirming sense that this was where she belonged, operating on adrenaline, mental acuity honed by critical hours spent on the slopes in another life. The snowmobile roared and bucked beneath them as Sophie led her team past familiar peripherals, terrain etched into her memory from countless solo explorations off-duty. The gondolas loomed above, their silhouettes ominous and promising all at once. Below them lay the steep, treacherous slope that hearing tales once interested guests now eyed with trepidation. Reaching the outpost, Sophie quickly dismounted. The mechanical station loomed ahead, a metal labyrinth concealed by snow and ice. She slipped off her gloves, ignoring the protest of her fingers as they numbed and stiffened in the cold. With deft motions traipsed with memory and anticipation, she pried open the access panel. The head technician, seeing her in action, leaned with her, pointing out the junctions and connections they needed to address. Her earlier assumption was confirmed: the critical hydraulic valve was locked by an invasive sliver of ice. The backup generator had failed to keep the heating elements active. Working quickly together, Sophie and the technicians snaked a thawing wire along the frozen conduit, shrugging off the wind and cold. Sophie gripped her toolkit's small blowtorch, encouraging it to life, the flicker of the flame bright against the backdrop of the enclosed casing. The hiss of making quick work of dismantling the barricade, meltwater trickling and blistering against the equipment. Every decision was born of intuition refined by experience. Finally, with a satisfied click, the components settled into place. The lift stirred above them as if waking sluggishly from a deep, unnatural slumber. The cables groaned and creaked as they resumed their circular path. Relief managed to claim a foothold over the tension momentarily. Sophie remained alert, wary of any anomaly or defect that might reveal itself. When her personal calculations assured her of a stable system, she withdrew her hand, the blowtorch finally quieting. The technicians exhaled collectively, parallel to the exultant cheers of those who could safely see the gondolas making their victorious descent back to the lodge. The reflection of triumphant faces idealized in the mirrored glass awaiting them was enough to reaffirm that humanity transcends wealth and stature when lives hang in balance. Returning to the lodge on the snowmobile, the jubilant onset of voices rose to greet them from the darkness. Not whispers now but shouts of gratitude, carrying over the wind. Inside, where the warmth beckoned, the chattering gatherings hushed at their approach. Eyes widened, not with skepticism but recognition. True awe had swept over the imposingly territorial air that regularly accompanied the elite inhabitation of these pristine lounges. Within that moment, Sophie found herself not just a clerk in heavy boots and a knit cap but the architect of a successful rescue. She had turned peril into progress. For a heartbeat, silence reigned absolute. The room was spellbound by respect and approval. As the echoes of applause and relief rippled through the lodge, Sophie retreated slightly from the edge of recognition, seeking solace in the quieter corners of her mind. This latest venture into chaos had awakened echoes from her past, memories she had carefully tucked away since stepping into the mundane stability of the equipment room job. The backdrop of snow-laced mountains unraveled scenes of her past in crisp clarity. It wasn't long ago that Sophie Bell was known as a linchpin in the mountain rescue operations within these very ranges. She had been a standout in the ski patrol, renowned for her uncanny ability to assess terrain, anticipate natural shifts, and execute high-stakes rescues under extreme conditions. Her history unfolded like a brisk mountain wind, stirring memories she hadn't visited in some time. Sophie traveled to a time, not very distant, when she was clad in the brash red and black uniform of the ski patrol, descending slopes with a commanding grace. She handled emergencies with a mix of compassion and calculated precision, traits that had made her an invaluable asset to the squad as they tackled the mountain's unpredictable moods. Each outing was more than just a rescue. It was a testament to her skills, her comprehension of the mountain's rhythms, a dance she performed with both trepidation and exhilaration. Her peers noted her gift for swift, incisive action. A kind of preternatural calm enveloped her when lives were at stake. However, 2 years ago, during a particularly grueling winter, Sophie faced an unyielding test that led to a paradigm shift in her journey. High on the ridge, nearly unreachable by helicopter or safer trails, a snowboarder had veered off course, slipping upon jagged ice into a narrow ravine. Sophie led the mission to retrieve him, a feat challenging even by seasoned standards. The rescue unfolded under harsh winds and limited visibility, demanding every ounce of Sophie's skill and resilience. As she rappelled downward, tethering herself amidst the sheer cliffs, the mountain's voice roared louder than usual. Unforeshadowed, an unexpected slab of ice gave way beneath her. In that heart-stopping instant, she tumbled, an involuntary swerve, leading to a cataclysm of movement. While her will and training enabled the successful retrieval of the stranded snowboarder, Sophie's fall was relentless and landed her in a bedrock of rugged ice, her world tilting on an axis of excruciating pain and immobilization. Fellow rescuers completed the mission, delivering both her and the snowboarder to safety, but Sophie's trials had only just begun. That accident had left her with a severe back injury, one that planted her unceremoniously in a hospital bed for weeks, followed by grueling sessions of physical therapy and holistic healing processes. Consequently, her position at the top of the snow-covered hierarchy was relinquished, replaced by a quiet, persistent struggle against pain and frustration. Despite the setbacks, Sophie's resolve never faltered. As she rehabilitated, the knowledge she had accumulated about the mountains remained sharp within her, as vivid as if she'd never left those icy caps. She accepted the job in the lodge's equipment room while nurturing a yearning to remain connected to the outdoors and to the world of precision she relished. At night, when the lodge rested in snow-crested silence, she pored over equipment manuals, learned about newer mechanical shifts for ski lifts, and reinforced her understanding of the many faces the mountain wore. But doubt had festered like an embrittled root, a quiet voice questioning if she could ever scale those peaks with her prior agility or be trusted with lives in her hands following that fateful tumble. Her decision to lead a more understated life at the lodge was partly a concession to these uncertainties, and partly a strategic retreat for recovering in the shadows of what she once commanded. As she reflected on this past while she stood amid the jubilant lodge throng, the light from dazzling chandeliers evoking phantom traces of those once familiar summits, Sophie realized perhaps she hadn't completely left the slopes behind. The events of the evening had set embers aglow beneath those ashes. With her back still healing under the weight of time, the aftermath of the evening's crisis had torn open the partition between who she had chosen to be now, a cleric, a spectator, and the fearless woman who had scaled threat and thrived on the mountain's challenges. Her journey wasn't a straight path but a series of switchbacks she navigated daily, learning to integrate her past aptitudes with safer practices. Now, at the nexus of expectation and praise, her heart swayed. Gone were the doubts that muddled her clarity, the crystalline acknowledgement settled in that she possessed a reservoir of capability, one reawakened by the chairlift incident. These spectators recognized her for more than any position could describe. They saw a tenacious spirit worthy of the peaks she once crested. Surrounded by residual admiration for her competence and courage, Sophie quietly pocketed these moments, a treasury of validation, for immediate savoring would be extravagant amidst the buzz of the public. Her world was no longer hemmed by anonymity but subtly expanding again, horizons stretching beyond preconceived limits. The memory of the evening's turmoil solidified, working briskly and coordinating minds under pressure, the old familiarity embracing her like fitted ski gear, comforting and functional. Here, nestled in these mountains, her want to serve as something more than an observer hinging on the eloquence of knowing what had come before, lay waiting, perhaps biding its time for doors yet to be opened. Thus, under the gentle snowfall through lodge windows, Sophie understood certainty was returning, not merely as a reconnection with her past valor, but affirming her present self-awareness, a map to navigate what lay ahead. Her journey wasn't just along mountain trails but into her soul, reconciling her sunlit ridges and shadowed valleys. Sophie's lifeline spun onward, her capacity for meeting the heights boundless once more. Back at the lodge, as the sun rose to cast a hopeful glow over the snowy peaks, the reality of the previous evening's events began to settle among the guests and staff like a fresh blanket of snow. Those who had been stranded on the lift shared their tales over breakfast, the chill of the icy steel beneath them, the dread that seeped in as they waited, and finally the miraculous descent that brought them safely back to the lodge. Within the lodge's luxurious setting, whispers about the unexpected hero spread like wildfire. Sophie Bell, the unassuming equipment room clerk, had stepped into a role that belied her modest position. Her composed actions had not only solved the crisis but also left a lasting impression on everyone present. Gratitude flowed towards Sophie from all directions. A mother held her sobbing child close, her voice thick with emotion as she thanked Sophie for her swift actions. An elderly man, once exuberantly recounting his skiing exploits, paused with a reverence for the quiet woman who had turned the night around. Gratitude shimmered in the air, poignant and genuine. Meanwhile, digital echoes of the night's drama began circulating online. Social media posts and phone videos captured snippets of Sophie working with the technician, the snowy backdrop giving her an almost mythical quality. A particular video clip, shaky and shadowed, showed her leaning over the exposed lift mechanism, persuading it back to life. Accompanying captions turned into a viral hashtag, celebrating the Mountain Maven, a moniker that followed Sophie now wherever she went in the lodge. Inside, among the staff, attitudes towards Sophie shifted dramatically. Formerly overlooked, she now found herself the focal point of respectful nods and friendly greetings from co-workers who once barely acknowledged her presence. The junior staff approached her with ease, inviting her into conversations previously reserved for when she was absent. Questions about equipment specifications, terrain maps, and the latest ski technologies were directed at her as newfound respect infiltrated previous indifference. Even guests at the lodge, who would once stride past her without a glance, paused now to express their gratitude and admiration. Some were fleeting with their words, a quick thank you or a simple nod in passing. Others lingered, sharing personal anecdotes, their willingness to connect unveiled by the night's reminder of common humanity beneath layers of opulence. The lodge manager invited Sophie to his office, offering effusive praises and even suggesting a potential raise in recognition of her contributions. Word of the incident and Sophie's pivotal role drew the attention of local media. A reporter from the nearby town interviewed guests who were eager to recount Sophie's heroism, describing her as the unsung genius of the slopes. Soon, Sophie's backstory began to surface, adding depth to her newfound recognition. Guests and staff alike learned about her past experiences in mountain rescue and her former prowess on the patrol slopes. Photographs circulated online, showing her younger self in ski patrol regalia, a picture of capability and energy against the sharp cleave of mountain sunsets. Accompanying the pictures were snippets of old news articles that lauded Sophie's bravery and skill in earlier rescue operations, painting a picture of a woman meant for the summits. In the midst of this attention, Sophie remained astoundingly modest. Her reluctance to bask in the limelight was evident in her gentle demeanor and the way she remained anchored in her duties, ever the professional. When approached, she would smile humbly, often redirecting the praise to her colleagues or the equipment that made the rescue possible. Yet inwardly, she felt a warmth spreading, a quiet glow of recognition and validation that wrestled away her past reservations. The acknowledgement wasn't just for the woman she'd once been, but for who she was now, in this moment. She realized that her past and present were amalgamated seamlessly, setting the tone for a rekindled future. Sophie's sense of belonging grew with each day. Her familiarity with the mountain, the palpable respect of those around her, and the small reminders of her efficacy, all combined to reinstill a self-assuredness she had not fully realized she had been reserving during her time in the shadows. Her time at the equipment room sparkled with newfound purpose, each moment of gratitude branding her heart with warmth. One afternoon at the dining hall, a guest whose mother had been stranded approached Sophie with a small, neatly wrapped box. Inside lay a finely crafted watch, understated in its elegance, a symbol of time well spent, of moments cherished and upheld. Inscribed on its back were the words, "To the Mountain Maven, may you always find your summit." Sophie accepted it, her heart swelling with emotions she sought to control, her gratitude conveyed through whispered thanks and a misty-eyed embrace. As day followed night, once eerie stillnesses filled with laughter, freshly woven connections garnered by action rather than idle wordplay. Sophie found harmonious symbiosis between her role at the lodge and the traces of her past, no longer were there invisible boundaries that fenced off her innate instincts. The world had seen Sophie Bell for who she was, recognized in her adaptability a strength mirrored by the mountains she so cherished. The stories woven from this chapter in her life found permanence not just in the online archives or the recalling of grateful guests, but in the enduring spirit she carried steadfastly within. The tales of that eventful night would long remain stories of legend, the ski lodge, nestled in its wintry solitude, forever linked to the night its patrons discovered the unsung hero among them. For as long as the mountains stood, draped in the seasons' changing hues, they would tell of the woman who had once saved more than just lives, but had also restored belief in perseverance and selfless courage. Days after the incident, the lodge returned to its rhythmic pulse, humming along the melody of everyday activities resonant with laughter and echoes from skiing escapades. Yet beneath this placid surface, change fluttered in anticipation of finding Sophie Bell once more at its heart. The lodge shimmered under the delicate caress of newly fallen snow when Sophie received unexpected news. The head of a prestigious regional mountain rescue academy appeared at the lodge, bringing with him an air of unmistakable purpose. Familiarity tugged at the corners of his eyes, the wisdom of a seasoned rescuer mirrored in hers. He sat across from Sophie in the cozy warmth of the lodge's cafe, where beams of winter sunlight angled onto their table. His expression was both warm and businesslike, as he slid a folder filled with program details her way. "I've heard about your remarkable actions the other night, Sophie," he began. "Your instincts and operational acumen are clearly honed. We could use someone with your proficiency to inspire a new generation of rescuers. I'd like to offer you a spot in our esteemed paramedic and rescue instructor recertification program." The words settled in Sophie's mind, tangling her comfort with a surge of nostalgia for the adrenaline-fueled peaks she once championed. It was an offer promising sleepless nights of rigorous commitments and demanding challenges, yet electric in the promise of fulfillment, an acknowledgement of her capabilities awaiting rediscovery. Still, Sophie hesitated. Her life at the lodge, albeit quiet, had provided a steady rhythm. She had carved out a niche with her skill set, and leaving that behind meant facing the demons of self-doubt that had lingered since her accident. Her gaze fell to her hands, fingers tracing the edges of the folder. "I appreciate the offer," she said slowly, "but I'm just not sure if it's the right time for me to return to something that intense." The head instructor nodded, fully aware of her apprehensions. "I understand it's a lot to consider. But think about all the lives you can touch, not just those in need of rescue, but those you'll teach and inspire. We see something special in you, and the world needs people willing to step forward with the courage you've shown." Their conversation stretched outward, into the nooks and crannies of what could be. With each exchange, Sophie found herself evaluating and re-evaluating her priorities, her dreams, the possibilities she had once thought distant fading into view. The decision lingered in Sophie's mind long after their meeting, swirling around her on her walks through the lodge grounds and in the quiet moments between chores. Words of gratitude from those she had saved echoed in her ears, harmonizing with the sincere praise from her peers. The lodge's serene idyll became a backdrop to reflect on her decision-making process, a dance between fear of the unknown and excitement for what was painfully familiar. One snowy evening, as she tucked into a corner booth in the lodge's dining hall, an elder guest approached her. His demeanor was as gentle as drifting snow, his eyes reflecting sincere gratitude, shadowed with the whispering gratitude of the life she had touched. "You know, Sophie," he began gently, "I've lived many years, and I've watched many people. Few have the gift you do, for looking past fear and into the heart of courage." He paused, shaking his head slightly as if searching for the right phrasing. "Don't be afraid to embrace it. Not for you, but for those it will save." His words saturated the air, a balm over lingering uncertainties, providing clarity and gentle encouragement. As the conversation settled into her heart, Sophie saw the truth she had so carefully veiled, now illuminated by reflections of others. The next morning, determination etched into her every step, Sophie sought out the visiting rescuer. Sunlight draped across the lobby, casting divine warmth which imbued her resolve with urgency. "I'll do it," she announced, her voice weaving around the soft exterior. I want to accept the offer. I'm ready to embrace who I am and what I can do. His face broke into a grin, echoing the sentiments of a shared mission. You're making a wise choice, Sophie. Welcome back to where you belong. The days that followed unfolded with a renewed sense of purpose as Sophie prepared for the program. Preparation involved late nights once more, poring over rescue manuals, and revitalizing skills embedded within years of dormancy. Her uniform traded solitude for a patchwork of collaboration, a testament to her life's amalgamation. The morning of her departure was greeted with light snowfall, the mountain bidding her a secular farewell. Fellow staff and friends gathered in the lobby to see her off, expressions warm, reflecting months of shared history and burgeoning friendships. Some placed gifts in her hands, reminders of the time spent within the lodge walls, others voiced kind words or shared brief, supportive embraces. Wherever you go, one of her colleagues said, pressing a small hand-woven scarf into her hands, know that you've touched us all here. Your stories will keep us warm. Sophie smiled, genuinely moved and profoundly grateful for her time at the lodge. And your stories will always bring me back here. Bearer of both duty and excitement, Sophie set her sights towards the transport awaiting beyond. The sense of redemption, the feeling of potential coursed like a thrill through her veins. The world beyond the lodge awaited, an arena mirrored with peaks yet to climb, and paths yet to be carved. As she stepped into the vehicle waiting to take her to the academy, she felt the weight of her new journey dawn upon her shoulders, simultaneously daunting and exhilarating. It was more than a transition, it was a return to form, informed by past wisdom and future possibilities twining into a single course. Later that day, at the academy's entrance, donning a new uniform stitched with promise, Sophie cast her gaze to the mountains, a canvas where histories and futures charted time. She felt the unyielding force of self-awareness unfurl within her, a symphony of courage resonating crescendo. Inside, she joined the cadre of recruits, diverse and electrified by the challenge each summit posed, ready to touch lives anew. Sophie Bell was no longer the invisible figure flitting the lodge. She was the woman who had conquered, by instinct, both inner and outer trials, prepared to lend insight forged in the crucible of past tribulations into a fresh theater of emergency and survival. Each call, each lesson, reaffirmed her sense of belonging, each moment drew her home. Emboldened, she embarked upon a venture where the world outside her window, vast and untrammeled, awaited with open arms. Prepared once more to intervene, to instruct, to persist, Sophie Bell, the mountain maven, was on a new course, with her past now acknowledged and visible to behold.